Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Road to Autonomy, brought to you in part by Florida Internet and Television. I am your host, Grayson Brulte. We are honored today to have Gopal Rajegowda, Senior Vice President, Related Companies, Managing Director, Related Southeast, on the podcast today. Welcome, Gopal.
Thank you.
It's interesting. You work for an incredible visionary company known as Related Companies, and you've done incredible developments all around the country. And I've seen some of them growing up with Columbus Circle, and it'd be great if we could start off just what is Related and what is that story, and how do you create these incredible visions around your developments?
Yeah, really good question. I've been with the company for 15 years. So I started right out of grad school at Columbia in New York City and have seen the company grow quite a bit. It's been actually quite an incredible journey. But, the company was started in the 70s by our chairman, Stephen Ross, who's still very, very active. He happens to also be the owner of the Miami Dolphins. So outside of our business, he's active in the Dolphins as well. It was a tax lawyer and started effectively with affordable housing, and then ultimately got into what we call 80-20 housing in New York City, which means 80% market rate and 20% low income. And then ultimately got into luxury for sale condominiums. And then from that, got into a partnership he formed with another gentleman at the company who's our CEO of our mixed-use division, Ken Himmel. They formed a mixed-use platform. When I started the company, actually, we were in an office on Madison Avenue previous to moving into Time Warner Center, which at the time, 15 years ago, really was our flagship mixed-use urban development in New York City. Like I said, a lot has happened, and I think today the company is really focused on creating visionary neighborhoods and communities that transform urban life.
And you've been with Related 15 years, and obviously we've seen changes in development. We've seen retail change, and we're starting to see a big trend around mixed-use development of the live, work, play. Can you kind of talk about that trend that we're seeing and what role Related plays in it?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's really our key and core focus today. But I think we predominantly focus in urban areas, and I think we have seen the trend for a while, and we get really excited about curating neighborhoods. And what we found is more and more young people are gravitating towards urban cores for convenience because, as you say, they want to live, work, and play in one environment in a convenient manner. So as we build out these mixed-use destination neighborhoods across the world, we like to think about, what does the public space look like? What does the arts and culture program look like? What does the experiential retail platform look like? What does the food look like? Food and beverage has become key, right? Because people go out and want to have places close to them. And what do the amenities look like? And then, how does the residential, office, and hospitality package tie all that together?
And the hospitality package is interesting with the introduction of Equinox hotels. What role is another trend we're seeing in the marketplace around healthy eating, healthy living, healthy lifestyles playing as you develop these properties?
Yeah, Equinox also a great acquisition for the company. I think initially, the acquisition was to bring wellness and to bring that component into our residential mixed-use buildings, which we realized was very, very successful, driving higher rental rates and higher condo premiums in the buildings where Equinox went in. And lo and behold, many years later, Equinox has matured into a very, very successful company. Equinox also owns SoulCycle and Rumble Boxing and Pure Yoga and some other platforms in the wellness space. But to tie into your question, once upon a time, a lot of people would say, the wellness thing is a trend and, it's going to be a fad. I don't think so. And I think in today's day and age, we know more about wellness. There's more science and technology around the importance of things like sleep and exercise and general wellness. So I think that what we've realized is driving that wellness pillar into our neighborhoods drives value because people want to be able to work out or go meditate or go do yoga in the park or be able to get a healthy meal any time of the day. So all of those platforms, I think that just kind of wellness means so many things, but if you're in an environment that inspires you, I think it drives mental well-being, which again is an important factor to people today.
And you're really interesting in everything that you've said. And the one thing that really stands out to me is inspires you. because when you work out, you feel good. When you eat healthy, you sleep better, and it all ties into it. Yeah. And one of the most common things that individuals on a daily basis get frustrated with is trying to find a place to park or sitting in traffic. As you develop City Place here in West Palm Beach for the future, you did something really interesting and innovative. You brought the curb to grade level. Mm-hmm. And when you showed me the drawings, you said, this is going to be for autonomous vehicle drop off and pickup. I want to be able to enable that. I want to be able to close the street down and have urban gardens and have various other activities and fairs. And what role does mobility play when you develop, especially City Place, since you're so focused on the future of mobility?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting topic and something that's near and dear to my heart, because I spent the last 4 years really thinking about reimagining. And just to clarify, City Place is now Rosemary Square. We've rebranded the neighborhood into Rosemary Square, but City Place was built really as an outdoor lifestyle center, or for lack of a better term, outdoor mall 20 years ago. And it was built at a time when it was incredibly pioneering. City Place really was one of the first lifestyle centers in the country. Interesting stats to understand. City Place opened in 2000. By 2002, there were 20 lifestyle centers in the country. By 2004, there were 140. So certainly, lifestyle centers became a vehicle for retail developers to develop more product outside of the traditional enclosed mall. Fast forward 20 years, because we're almost pretty much at our 20th year anniversary in 2020, which is pretty incredible. 20 years, as we had spoken about this earlier, 20 years feels like 100 now based on the pace of change. I laugh because, when we built City Place, we didn't have iPhones. We didn't even know that something called Wi-Fi would be invented. So in fact, part of the renovations and work we've done in the public infrastructure piece was to really, rip up the roads and put fiber in and think about those kind of things. But one of the things that really piqued my interest as I realized the whole city had been built around City Place. So I think City Place really had been a very important historical economic engine for downtown West Palm Beach. Now Rosemary Square continues to be, because it's really, really the core and the heart of the city. One of the things I realized as I was walking around, the former City Place was, there were a lot of hard edges. And while there were a lot of beautiful things, a lot of the beautiful things weren't working for people and for public spaces. And I was fortunate enough to have met a partner at a company called Gehl, Gehl. Gehl was started in the 70s by a really interesting guy. His name is Jan Gehl. And Jan Gehl, all he wanted to do in Copenhagen, because that's where the company started. Now they're global, but that's still where the core of the company is. All he wanted to do was study public spaces, people, and the interaction around public spaces. So we ended up hiring Gehl, and we did what was called a public space, public life survey, so PSPL survey. And we surveyed how people were using spaces, and we realized there was a huge opportunity to optimize green space, optimize walkability, and make the environment more amenable and available and approachable for people of all varieties, right? All ages and from all sort of areas. While we're developing these neighborhoods and developing these inspiring communities, it's very important for us to get the public spaces right, to create the platform to drive more value in the retail, the food and beverage entertainment, which I call the horizontal component, and then the vertical components, which are the residential buildings, the office buildings, and the hotel. And it's quite simple, right? I mean, where do you want to live? Where do you want to work? Where do you want to play, right? You want to be in these environments where you feel good and you're inspired, and tied back into the wellness piece. If I can walk around a neighborhood and grab lunch, or I can meet people for drinks after work, or I can just meet and sit in a park and think and be creative. All of those things are very valuable. We think of those things, and that becomes part of a larger package of this kind of neighborhood curation.
The neighborhood curation, to me, is extremely interesting, and there's rumors I've heard, and I can't find any factual evidence to it, but I believe it, that when you were first building City Place, a developer from California named Rick Caruso came to take a look, and that was the inspiration behind the Grove. Is that factual true? Or?
So I've also heard that, and it's very interesting. I mean, someone should probably get in touch with Mr. Caruso. I mean, he's a very successful developer, as you know, having lived in LA previous to coming to Palm Beach. But it is interesting because there are a lot of similarities between the Grove and the former City Place. I mean, certainly very different locations, and a lot of different things happen in each location over the 20 years. I mean, I think certainly where Caruso built the Grove, there was a more accelerated pace of development and density than there was at City Place. But now we're going through that wave now, so I hope the next 10 years are very positive. But yeah, a lot of similarities. And I think when City Place was built and opened in 2000, it won many awards, including, best mixed use development in the country under the, Urban Land Institute. And I think a lot of people came here and looked at this as really a model for what the next 20 years could bring in the world of walkable, mixed use sort of experience oriented retail and food and beverage.
And it's interesting because after Caruso built the Grove, he went and built the Americana out in Glendale, California. And the interesting big change from that was the Americana had housing, residential housing.
Okay.
And then he went and built another experience out in the Pacific Palisades, residential housing, and did a really interesting job of curating great brands to have that experience, really fashionable, high-end shopping, little boutiques, really great food. And I've noticed a trend with the related projects where you've done really great jobs. When we lived in New York, I used to love Landmark hamburgers, and you've done a really good job. You put a Mandarin Oriental in there. You put a really great hamburger place in there. You put the absolutely incredible Thomas Keller's per se. Mm-hmm. And I'm seeing that same trend happen down here, what you're doing with Rosemary Square. How does one go about curating these wonderful experiences? And then on the flip side of that, how do you find that right balance? Because you yourself and Relay as a company do an absolutely fantastic, amazing job of just curating these experiences.
Thank you. Yeah, no, really appreciate that. Because if I was to explain to you the amount of time and effort and blood, sweat, and tears that go into this, we'd be talking for hours. But yeah, I think it's a really good question. And people have asked me this before, and I like to say that this is more of an art than a science. My background is in hospitality. I think others, including the CEO of our mixed use division, Ken Himmel, who kind of lead experiences that drive value in all of our other components in these developments. We think like hospitality people, and one of the big key components of hotels and hospitality is food and beverage, right? So I think that's been a differentiator for Related. Let me give you an example. You don't go into a lot of enclosed malls and get inspired by the food court, because the food court was an afterthought. They wanted to lease all the other space to tenants to get the highest rents possible. And they said, oh, you know what? We'll make money in the food court, but we'll put a McDonald's in here. We'll put and nothing against McDonald's, but they weren't really thinking about it. And there's a couple of reasons for that. I mean, I think it was just food and the culture of food was not as popular as it is today, right? And the accessibility of food was not as accessible as it is today. Now if you're someone, you can get on the web and learn about every hot chef in the world, and it's exciting and it's fun, and quite frankly, chefs are the new rock stars, right? And it's a really cool thing. And we've got all sorts of TV shows and Netflix and you name it, right? So for us, it's always been in our blood. I mean, we love food experiences, we love hospitality experiences. We love that it creates a texture in our environment, as you say, that really kind of adds a different caliber and quality level. But it really is an art, and it's really a lot of passion. I personally go out and meet with the chefs and meet with the brands and meet with the CEOs of these companies to make sure that they're right for this community. Because when you're signing these deals and you're getting these deals, they're generally, if you do your job right, which you can't get it right all the time, but they're generally very long-term relationships, right? So you want to make sure that everyone is going in with eyes wide open about what the opportunity is, and you want to make sure that it's the right opportunity. And look, the food has to have variety, right? You have to have a quick serve salad or taco guy per se, right? And then you also want that fine dining experience at nighttime. So you got to figure out, based on every local sort of area that we're developing in, what's the right mix, right? But in West Palm, in Palm Beach County, I was just talking to a chef the other day who was the executive chef at a great restaurant in Miami. I think we're, Palm Beach County and certainly West Palm, taking the lead. We're on the brink of really a culinary revolution here. Miami and maybe Lauderdale have sort of always gotten the focus for food, but I'm really excited about what's happening. I'm really excited that at Rosemary Square we're taking the lead on bringing some really great chefs into the collection.
Let's go back a little bit and relate its history. When you were developing Columbus Circle, was it challenging to get a chef of Thomas Keller's caliber, reputation to open essentially in a mall? Was that a challenging negotiation for you?
Yeah. So I wasn't involved with that negotiation, but I could tell you absolutely. Yes, with confidence, because I know one of my partners built a relationship with Thomas, and yeah, very difficult. I mean, look, when you're dealing with these chefs, they are very, very particular. They've gotten to places in life and delivered experiences because they're detail-oriented people, right? They don't just show up and say yes, right? You really got to pitch them and get them focused. And guys like Thomas Keller and Masa and others that are still there. I mean, I think that they realize that this is this was a place they wanted to be in, going on the 4th level of a vertical retail shopping center, effectively, right off Central Park, where there's a Mandarin Oriental hotel, there's 1.5 million square feet of office, and there's high-end residences. That's where they wanted to be, and they had confidence with their offering. Because I think in today's day and age, generally, if you're delivering an offering that makes sense, people will travel to find you, even if you're on the 4th floor of a shopping center. In fact, if you go to Asia, I mean, it's just tremendous. You go to Hong Kong or Bangkok or Singapore. I mean, these are like massive 7-level structures, and there's food all over the place, and it's really interesting. But yeah, certainly with Thomas, I know that was a very sensitive relationship, and he certainly is very happy, and it's a very successful restaurant. I think there's probably a 3-month wait to get in, and a very high check to get to eat there, and certainly from there, Ken Himmel ended up convincing Thomas to also come to Hudson Yards in his new format, the Tack Room, which is spectacular space as well if you ever get a chance to go. But I think life is about building relationships. And we certainly like to build relationships with high-level chefs, retailers, partners, and be able to kind of roll them out across our platform, wherever it makes most sense.
You said a lot of interesting things there, and we'll go through them here one by one. It's about finding you for the food. It's finding the right opportunity and traveling to the food. Do you see an opportunity due to the regulatory environment in Florida with fully autonomous vehicles being legal, where in Rosemary Square you get a really innovative hip chef and says, you know what, I want to turn culinary upside down. I want to be known for something. I will bundle a mobility service that will pick you up at your residence, bring you to my establishment. You have a really fine dining experience, and it will take you home. I look at it from kind of through the business eyes of the business manager who's managing the property. I know when they're coming. I have a good idea of when they're leaving. I can sell more reservations. And then from a liability standpoint, I don't have to worry about somebody having too much to drink. Because the only way to go into that restaurant is if you ride in the autonomous vehicle. Do you see any chefs kind of doing something that innovative in Rosemary Square?
It's a great question, and we're really kind of looking forward, which I'd love to do. So today, if you don't want to drive somewhere, you take rideshare. And rideshare, you tell me, when did Uber start? What was it? How long ago was that?
7 years.
So 7 years, right? Now you and I can't, that's one of my most used apps on my phone, right? Uber and Lyft, both, right? So it's only been 7 years that we've seen the rideshare revolution totally transform the way that people move and mobility, right? So I think people today, certainly younger people and older people too, are used to using rideshare, right? So if I want to go and go to a restaurant, but I don't want to drive there, and maybe I want to have a couple drinks, I'm taking rideshare to the restaurant, getting to the restaurant, eating there, maybe hanging out at another bar or somewhere in the environment, and then coming back on rideshare, right? What you're talking about is an autonomous vehicle picking up a customer at their home, bringing him to the restaurant. They have the restaurant experience, and then they leave in that autonomous vehicle or another autonomous vehicle, right? So I think what's interesting about this, I've never thought about this, so this is the first time I'm even thinking, but what's interesting about it is, like you said, there's more precision involved in the sense that if you tie together the autonomous service with the restaurant, and the restaurant can really track when the customer is going to get there, and maybe even greet that customer at the car with a, shake their hand and walk them over to the restaurant. We're talking about amazing hospitality, right? That's why people come back. And then if the restaurant can then provide the autonomous vehicle ready when they're signing their check, now we're getting into extreme hospitality. I love this stuff. I think that the customer experience enhancement is incredible, right? So you may say, oh, it's the restaurant, but what if Rosemary Square does it, right? If I'm in the business of getting people to come spend as much time as possible and as much money as possible, because that drives the success of my environment, right? From a retail and restaurant standpoint. Maybe I'm partnering with an autonomous vehicle company, and maybe I'm charging some of that back to the restaurateurs. But, is there a platform in this mixed-use neighborhood that can tie in autonomous experiences that just create more ease for the customer to access the product? I love the idea. It's very interesting.
Because I think about the idea, and you're 100% right on the platform, but I think about the idea with a chef that we both respect, Grant Atkins of Alenia in Chicago.
Yeah.
And when you eat at Alenia, it's all about the scents and the smells, the whole experience, and how that, from the minute you arrive into the dining room to the minute you finish your after dinner drink, that whole experience is curated. But what he misses is getting you there. So you're stressed out in traffic. So imagine they take what is the scents and the smells that they want you to, and the aromas they want you to experience before you even get in there, to set your mindset right. Kind of if you go into a spa where they have the oils and the smells and you're getting relaxed, it's kind of interesting. You take that out into the vehicle, and then as related to being a developer of really great experiences, you become the platform. And it's something that you can offer your tenants and saying, if you want this, Related has access to X fleet. And we, as developers and builders, we have those relationships. We can build the custom interiors of those vehicles for you to enhance that experience. And there's very few states in the country you can do that. And Florida's one of those states. That's going to be really interesting to see as you expand that platform.
Yeah, no, it's certainly, anything we can do to make that customer experience the best, that's driving value, right? Because I always like to say, you never have a second chance to make a first impression, right? So if I want someone to come to Rosemary Square to eat at one of the restaurants, I want that experience from them getting out of their house to the restaurant to be great, right? But I can't control that because that's them driving, and if they stop at a traffic light and they're irritated because there's traffic or whatever it is, I can't control that, right? So the psychology of the customer ends up becoming such that there may be a situation where the psychology is negative before they're coming into a really positive experience. So I love this idea, and I think it's something that has legs and something we'll be excited to explore in the future.
And as you explore new things, you're putting in luxury condos in Rosemary Square. Will a luxury hotel come at some point to kind of complement that, where you can eat here, you can sleep here, you can live here? It becomes a destination. And then you and I have had these wonderful conversations, and I'm really proud and love for you to talk about it, is art. Yeah. And you curate incredible art and experiences. Yeah. Is that something that we'll eventually see more of in Rosemary Square?
Oh, absolutely. So I think you have a few questions there, but one, we're doing luxury rentals right now. We're not quite doing condos, but the rentals we're doing are at a condo quality. We're going to break ground on a building next year called 575 Rosemary, which have about 350 units. It's a 21-story building on what was formerly a Macy's that we bought back. 50,000 square foot site right in the middle of Rosemary Square. I'm pretty confident to say it'll probably be one of the best residential rental buildings in the state of Florida. We like to build above the market, and we really kind of like to create a great experience, and we've seen we get premiums for that on the rental side. So we're doing that, and then luxury hotel. We built the Hilton here in West Palm, connected to the Palm Beach County Convention Center. I think I would encourage anyone who hasn't seen it to see it, because it's unlike any other Hilton you've ever seen. It's a really great, I would say 4.5-star hotel, very luxurious and great experiences. So will more luxury come down the road? Potentially. I mean, we're not really thinking about that at the moment, but I think tying it all together, you basically have the resident, you got the office worker, you got the local, and then you have the tourist, right? So every one of those verticals need to have great experiences, and we think about all those verticals, and all of those customers coming together really creates the place. I think all of that's very important. The last question was about art. Yeah, I was very fortunate, as we were reimagining City Place into Rosemary Square, to have some really incredible, art curators and partners who came together, and I got really inspired by how culture forward this area is. Just Palm Beach County, but certainly Palm Beach and West Palm Beach, the density of culture within such a small area is amazing. You have the Norton Museum of Art, which just got redone by Norman Foster. You have the Four Arts. You have the Kravis Center for Performing Arts. You have Palm Beach Drama Works. You have the Historical Society. I mean, you have so much. If you look actually at an aerial of Rosemary Square, it's like literally surrounded by culture all around. So we wanted to tie into the local spirit that arts and culture is something that people sponsor and come out for. What I also really got inspired by, was by bringing artists to the party early as opposed to later. Because when I say early opposed to later, I mean, the historical way of development is I'm building a building, and I build the building, and I need art on the wall. Okay, well, I'm now going to think about what artist to put on the wall. So we actually did the opposite, and we said, let's bring the artists to the table with the designers and the urban planners and everyone in the beginning. And let's let the artists help drive the vision for the development in a way. And that's been really exciting. And we just launched 2 pieces. And by the way, I really feel that I have a lot of artist friends. I support art. I'm a big fan of free public art that's accessible by all. Very different than blue chip art that you buy, at a gallery or from a gallerist or a collector, you name it. Nothing wrong with that. But I mean, I think in our areas, we're about public accessible art, but high quality art by world-renowned artists. And I like to say, and I've learned this through having, working with quite a few artists and having friends who are artists, I feel like working with artists, you have a lens into the future, and that lens has just been incredibly inspiring for me, just understanding where creative thought is going. If we can take that and use that as an inspiration in the way we build cities and the way we build downtowns, that's really exciting. So we just launched, for years we've been working on two major public artworks. One is a 30-foot tall tree. It's a man-made banyan tree with 100,000 LED programmable leaves on it, designed and fabricated by a group called Symmetry Labs. Symmetry Labs became well known at Burning Man in 2017. They launched the Tree of Tenere. That sort of led them more into thinking about LED as an art and a light form. And this thing is amazing and highly adaptable, programmable, you name it, right in the middle of our square. And then right adjacent to that, we opened a water pavilion sculpture by a world-renowned artist. His name is Jeppe Hein, someone that I've become good friends with and just very impressed by. Jeppe is a world-renowned artist based in Berlin. He's Danish. He was in the Venice Biennale this year. Jeppe's work is all about social interaction, community, and empathy for people. So this water pavilion, which you can walk into different rooms and have 9 feet of water walls around you and not get wet, is really about laughing. It's about play, and it's about human connection. And I just got so inspired by this guy's work, and we had the commemoration on the 6th, and it's the first time that people went into it, and there was this really explosive feeling of how we could bring people together through public art. And the great thing about this, it's water, so it's Florida, and it ties into the elements here. But when you turn it off, it's adaptable, flexible space. I think flexibility is sort of the new world, right? I mean, we don't want to limit ourselves with things that limit that flexibility and adaptability. But anyhow, arts and culture, we've got a whole program we're working on, and everything from tying art into the retail experience, into more public art, into temporary activations, into workshops and makers marts, and all sorts of things, because we really believe that art has transformative powers in communities.
Yeah, and soon art will, the BMW painted cars will come back.
That's a great point. The brands today understand, the power of art and artists and how art can bring community together. So that's really exciting too for us to figure out how we kind of tie all the knots and make that connection as well.
And tying this all together, you've told me a really great story about building the restoration hardware.
Oh, yeah.
On Okeechobee. It kind of ties this whole conversation together. Would you mind talking about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Another fortuitous deal that came at the right time after we opened the hotel. But that was a deal that we did directly with Restoration Hardware. Gary Friedman is the CEO of that company, and one of the most impressive guys, I think, in the retail experience game today. I think that Restoration Hardware is more of a lifestyle brand as opposed to a furniture brand, and I think that's a phenomenal concept. But in any case, that was a building that was originally slated to be 40,000 square feet over 3 levels. Gary stopped the development midway, doubled the size to 80,000 square feet, and added the 4th level with the restaurant and wine bar. I think it's one of the great rooms in the world. So funny enough, happens to be in West Palm Beach. Very, very popular. That space, when you walk into Restoration Hardware's West Palm Gallery here, which is at the south end of the Rosemary Square neighborhood on Okeechobee, adjacent to the Hilton Hotel, you're not really sure if it's a gallery, if it's a furniture exhibition space, if it's a hotel lobby, or if it's a restaurant, because it's all of the above. It's inspiring to walk in there in any time of the day, because there's ever-changing design, there's great food, there's great hospitality, and it just ties it all together. And I think that certainly that gallery has proven that you can make home interesting and fun and an experience. And I think that's where all of retail is going.
Yeah. And as we've heard in this conversation, we've discussed art, hospitality, retail, and development. And the one piece of glue that's going to connect it all is mobility. So Gopal, thank you so much for coming on the Road to Autonomy podcast. And the future is bright. The future is autonomous. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Road to Autonomy podcast. If you've enjoyed listening, please rate, review, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Want to get in touch? Follow us on Twitter at Road to Autonomy, or email podcast@brulteco.com. The Road to Autonomy is produced by Brulte & Company. The views and opinions expressed on the Road to Autonomy podcast do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of Brulte & Company. The content discussed in this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be taken as legal, tax, investment, or business advice.